Okay. Hi, everybody. How are you, Tiago? How are you, everybody, where you are? Today, I really wanted to talk about a very important subject, which is uh, the microservices and the domain-driven design. So I'm just starting uh, opening the slides. Uh, where is the want to share my screen? Just a minute. Send share screen. Okay. Okay. So can you see my screen now, right?
Yes.
Good. So I'm starting. All right. So this is the talk. The screen is fully wide, right?
Yes, yes.
All right.
Everyone.
So let's start by introducing myself. My name is Maad bin Ali. I'm a principal software engineer at Vision Bank. So I have like over 15 years of experience back in technologies. This is my Twitter account, Music Code, and this is my LinkedIn. And I also do the writing in my blogs, musicode.com. Uh, this is what we were talking about. Hopefully, like we're gonna take maximum half an hour. We'll be like talking about what's DDD and when to use DDD, the pros and cons. We'll take some simple introduction about microservices and monolithic application. Then we'll see the notion of decomposing microservices, and then we'll see when those two topics are met, what we can happen. Then we'll see the summary and conclusion. Okay, so let's start by the domain-driven design. So domain-driven design is a concept. It's really used like in the past, maybe in 2000s, in the early 2000s. So Eric Evans has written a book called Domain-Driven Design: Tackling the Complexity in the Heart of Software. So the basic notion of DDD, it is putting the business or the use cases or the important or the logic or the business logic. You can call it the business logic, you can call it the domain logic, you can say the complexity of the system in the center. Then after that, everything is depending on this in this business logic or your domain or your workflows or your uh, like what the system really needs. So if you contrast the domain-driven design with the data or technology-driven design, we developers actually keen to know about if we involved into any project, we directly like think about what's the technology stack we're gonna we're gonna like use. Either we'll use Spring or we will use, for example, Micronaut. Are we going to use Java 17 or are we going to use Java 11? Or are we going to use asynchronous programming or non-asynchronous programming? Are we going to use database, flat database like NoSQL, or are we going to use structured database like SQL databases? So these questions, the domain-driven design like suggests shouldn't be the developers' questions. The real developer questions should be like, what problems are we going to solve? What complexities? What are the level of complexities in the system? So this the focus of the focus of the system, focus of the developer, or if the backend engineers, front engineers, or type of engineers should be always how to solve the problem and how can we like benefit or leverage the business rather than using the technologies. So this is the notion. This is the essence of the domain-driven design. So, for example, if we have any like banking domain, or let's say insurance domain, health insurance domain, or like any type of insurance domain, or any type of banking domain, we will see like a really big level of complexity. For example, the banking domain has got like credits, savings, type of customers, you have transactions, you have debit, you have credit, you have like so many workflows or so many like business flows. So I think we have come across so many like projects where we open the code base and we will find the business problems and the backend logic is really not matching. I'm not saying it's not the same result. I'm saying the linguistic, the consistency between the business and the code base, they are not synced. For example, if you speak with the business, let's say they are called the domain experts. So any domain expert who is like fully aware of the business and its flows or its complexity, they are called domain experts. So uh, like domain-driven designs always recommend that domain experts and the developers, engineers should always speak the same language, should always be in sync. They should understand each other. The domain experts should also provide the problem, explain the problem in a very easy way, and the developers, engineers take these problems and try to solve them into a coding, into like a programmatic style or programmatic way. So when you open the code base, for example, you'll find sometimes like create account or such word of these, such like technical words. So domain-driven design, they suggest always use the business terms like open account, like transfer, not send. Sometimes you find code send money to, no, shouldn't be, like should be transfer. So these words, this language is spoken, is called the ubiquitous language. It's the language that is spoken across all the levels. It should be understood by everyone. So this is the essence. This is the notion. This is the basic. No, this is the basic idea of domain-driven design. As you see on the screen, it is actually a software development approach. Yes, it is a software development approach which focuses on modeling the domain and the processing space. And also, it really helps the developers to create software that is always, as we said, always aligned, always sync with the business domain. Level of collaboration between the domain experts and the engineers are very, very high, and they are always repetitive refinements. There will be always repetitive meetings and refinements in order to understand the problem, understand the business, understand the domain very, very quickly, and or very largely, or very deeply. So the outcome of all this, really the outcome of all this, you'll find a software which is really reflecting the business. It's not like a software that is talking about something X and the business wants something which is Y. So if you follow these approaches of the domain-driven design, eventually, of course, we will find always the software with the code base is really reflecting the business. So this is like a simple introduction about the domain-driven design. So this is like basically where you have your entities always here in the middle. They are the business logic or the domains always in the middle, and this red circle So always the dependency goes from top to down. So every layer will depend on the layer beneath it. There shouldn't be this layer depend on the this layer. No, this layer depends on this, and this layer will call this, and this layer will call this. So it's always sequential. Why it's like this? Because always the business in the logic in the center, and everything else will need to talk to these entities. So entities is like your models where your real business is located. Then this red circle is the use cases. You can call it also the domain services, your service layer actually. It will act here as the orchestrators, because sometimes you have like three, you need to talk to three domains. So there should be one service talking to this domain, after finishing call talking to the other domain, talking to other domain. So this is like in a brief. And putting your databases on the side, these are called frameworks and drivers, your third parties. They shouldn't be always in the center. Before we used to put the database in the center when then designing our database, then like everything else is depending on this database. No, shouldn't be like this. So going back, if we also, one of the key benefits of domain-driven design is will help us to subcategories, subdomains, break down, let's say in a simple words, breaking down our large complex application into pieces. So every piece will be will be like focusing on a single problem and try to solve this single problem. For example, we have here inventory. We'll be always dealing with inventory stuff. We have sales, we have delivery, we have finance, we have order management, we have so and so. So if we divide our system, break down our system into subdivisions, will be always easy for us. It will be always easy for us to tackle each problem aside and solve these problems. And also, every domain will have its own language, spoken language there, and its own rules and validations and complexity. So this is what is called the bounded context. Bounded context is the subdomains or subcontext every system will have. As we said, for example, we have the order management. Into, if we have like online store, this is our domain actually. If we divide this online store into pieces, we will end up of having bounded contexts. So each, as we said, each bounded context will have its own data, functionality, communication, domain experts, developers will focus always into this domain, and the outcome always is subdomain is going to reflect the software that the developers are trying to solve. So somebody might ask, okay, DDD sounds really interesting. We are trying to, subcategories, subdivide. We're trying to solve the problems. We're trying to shift our mind from technical into business like oriented thinking. So, but when are we going to use this? So Eric Evans always uh, like suggested in his book, these patterns or these rule guidance or these patterns, these principles should be always implemented, should be always like embraced in very complex problems. Because if you have big application which has like many subdomains, many business rules, many functionalities, so is complex, as we said, like banking domain, insurance domain, these really where the DDE will shine. But if you have simple applications, you have CRUD applications, create, delete, update, this stuff, if you add the DD driven, domain driven design principles and practices, they are going to make it really uh, worse. So if you have simple things, use the right tool. So as they say, DDD, it's not like one size fit. It's not fitting always every problem. No, if you have complex problems, large domain, you need to make this large domain into subdomains. Yes, it's really highly recommended to use these practices. Also, make this in your mind that if you want this software, like if you have a strategic plan to have this software, it's like a core software is going to, it's going to like to this software is going to live for a long period. Okay, this software is also must be a good candidate for domain driven design. uh, as a long-term software, yes, you need to take it in your consideration. So these are some of the things where we have to use DDD, domain-driven design. If you have complex, if you need high collaboration between the two teams, between the domain experts and developers, if you are targeting your system to be a long-term project where you need where you want to have more maintainability, more readability, more maintenance. So it's a really good candidate for that. So let's also jump into some of the pros and cons of the domain-driven design. So domain-driven design is really helpful, and for the if you have like it's always it always helps to understand and always put the core the core the core problem. It's the business. It's always making the business is the core concept, and also one of its features that it like it established the language between the between the domain experts and developers. So it's making a very common language between them. uh, it will always have a very good maintainable and scalable software in the long term, because your software is always understood by the developers and understood by the domain experts. So you will have the level of understandability is high. So therefore, you can maintain it very well. Also, it will help in terms of the design. It will help always to design your system in a very good way. You know, you have main categories, subcategories, and so on. And also the collaboration is very high between all the stakeholders. But these are the very good pros. So we have sometimes the disadvantages. Of course, it is an overkill for simple domains, as we said. If you have like straightforward business rules, simple use cases, you don't have to go into this very long process. It requires, if your business doesn't have like really dedicated teams where they have to where they will share the knowledge across all the stakeholders. Maybe your application or your organization doesn't have this one, so it's really a big disadvantages. It might like affect the application itself. So, and also it requires, one of its advantages, it requires a really initial learning and sometimes time consuming, because it's like learning curve for the whole team, for the whole stakeholders. So it requires also a team with a strong design skills and experience. Yes, of course, because the team, if the team doesn't know how to, create, or how to uh, how to break down your system into the appropriate or the exactly correct subdomains or subcategories, it might like break your system and affect the whole system. So it requires really a very deep knowledge of design. So these are the pros and cons of domain-driven design. Now let's jump into the microservices. So we've spoken so far. Now, so far we've spoken about the domain-driven design. We see how it will help your system to break it down, to establish rules, to establish some of the guidance, some of the practices, principles for you. Now, why we are okay? Let's jump into the microservices. What's microservices? Microservices, it's basically about having a service dedicated and focused into one business domain or one like problem, trying to solve a single problem. And this this like microservice, it's always self-contained, self-managed, independent, deployable, so you can deploy it. It's like agnostic. It's not regarding. It has to be in this technology or this technology. No, it's like self-agnostic. So uh, this is like in a brief, what is like microservice is an architecture style uh, where an application is decomposed into a collection of independent, loosely coupled, as we said. Each service is focusing on a specific business capability. So, what is the benefit of microservice? Benefit is it will really increase the agility. It's like will improve the scalability of the system because each system like will be decomposed, will be like self-contained, and you can take this service and deploy it alone. I don't have to deploy the whole thing. uh, it's really greater flexibility because this system this system is using this technology. I'm not bound to another system where another service which dictates that I have to use this technology, or maybe I have to use this skill, technology stack. No, it's like flexible. Some of the drawbacks, of course, it will increase the complexity because generally, like if you have monolithic application, you have one piece, okay, was one code base. Uh, it's one thing I can manage. I can do everything in one place. No, if you have the moment you have from one thing into like 50 things, no, it's really uh, to hard to like manage those things in terms of monitoring, observability, testing everything independent. It's really like a big headache also. So you should value always and trade off. Put the trade off always in a side. So how to identify? Now we know that this is the microservice. This is the domain-driven design. This is the microservice. Now somebody might ask, how can I decompose my application, or how can I like define the subdomains? So subdomains, if you want to identify or break down your application to subdomains, generally this is not done by a single person. This is like a group of people where you have your business domains, okay, your business experts, developers, architects. They sit, business analysts, product owners. So they sit and they meet regularly, iterative process. They try to identify the problems, try uh, to break down things as a high level. So if you bring down things into high level, also if you break down things into high level, there is a big opportunity that this subdomain is also might be broken down into also other subdomains. So this is like iterative task. It's not about, okay, today we have online store, break it down today. No, it's not like that. So it needs like a very careful studying the domain itself, the business, meeting the customers, meeting the people. And there is some of the techniques that you might use. It's always sometimes as the Conway's law, the architecture of your system always reflect your organization structure. So let's take an example. If you have like online store, you'll find definitely in most of the organizations, you'll find the order management department, you'll find the delivery department, you'll find the sales department. So this is a good opportunity for us to define the subdomains based on these organization structure or organization departments. So now the now the party starts here. So now let's say that we so far spoken about the domain driven design, and we saw how it's beautiful, how it's good, how it might reduce the complexity of the system. So if we combine these two things, we have domain driven design, we have microservices. Now if we combine them, we're gonna have a very, very, very nice architecture. How? Firstly, we will have a microservice which is always focusing on one thing. This one thing is already identified by the domain-driven design by subcontext, by a subdomain. So if you have a subdomain which is orders, okay, order management, let's say orders, we will have a parallel to that microservice is called order service. So we will combine, we will as soon as we have a subdomain ready, identified, we will take this domain and pack it into a microservice. We will have the team which is working on the order management service. We will have the front end engineers, back end engineers, we will have the QAs, all of them. A team, feature team will like focus on how to, I mean, how to solve the problems in the orders. So we will have the orders service is focusing on this domain. So we will take this domain, pack it in this, deploy it alone, scale it alone, solve it alone, dedicated team. It's a great fit. So in domain-driven design, also we have something called aggregate routes. Let's say an online store, we will have the order inside this service. We will have the aggregate route. It's the order itself. So when we combine this microservice along with the DDD inside the order service, the order is going to be the aggregate route. So inside this also domain-driven design, we will have something called domain events and communication. These domain events and communication, imagine that an order is placed in this microservice, and I want to notify the shopping microservice, which is another microservice dedicated on the shopping domain. I want to notify this. So domain-driven design says we have something called the domain events. The domain events, like if we have hundreds of microservices, how these events will be communicating. So domain-driven design will help us to identify the events in the subdomains, all of the subdomains, and we will draw the communication between them. So that's a very good also fit between microservices architecture and you have events. Also, we have context mapping and system design. So this can guide the decision about how to design the interaction between these microservices. That's a very good. So order management, we need to draw the boundaries for order management. This order microservice, it will talk to which another microservice. So we can draw the relationship between orders, shipping. Maybe it will talk to the shipping. It will speak to the maybe customers. Maybe it will speak to the another microservice like the delivery microservices and so on. So domain-driven design always will help us to to establish the relationship between all the subdomains. So this is also another good feature of domain-driven design and applying it with the microservices. Now we have a very interesting also concept in the domain-driven design is called anti-corruption layers and integration. So it's basically mainly for integration between the legacy systems and the external systems. For example, we have a subdomain called the payment management. Let's say it's a microservice called the payment microservice. And if an order is placed, and once I want to pay this order, I want to speak to the payment gateway, or which is like an external system to my into my like business. So my problem now is I want to communicate to my system, which is my microservice, in with another external system. So domain-driven design always suggests that to always have another layer which is not attached to this, which is not like embedded in this payment microservice. No, you should have always another layer in the middle where this layer will work as a mediator between that layer, which is the external system, and between our internal system. Why like this? It is saying that your system, which is your this anti-corruption layer, it shouldn't know about your domain, which is your payment and this stuff, and it should always have a separation between your business, your problem, and integration, because this layer can be replaced, can be changed by another layer in the future, but your orders or payment shouldn't be touched. So this is also a very great idea. You can use it. We are using this in our like in our structure. So this is so far uh, like the combination, the match between the domain-driven design and the microservices. So let's have a quick recap. We have like taken an introduction of domain-driven design, when to use it, some of the pros and cons, some of the monolithic introduction, and we talk also some of the microservices introduction. We spoke about decomposing your microservices and so on. So this is like briefly about this talk, and I am planning for the next talk to have like real demo where we will have like an online store or any like kind of complex system, and we'll try to decompose this into subdomains, and we'll see how to center your application, your business in the logic in the center, and everything else, depend on this business. And we'll see also into action what do we mean by rich model and anemic model. We'll see why we place everything in the middle. So these are the things are really, we will see some good hands-on in the upcoming lecture. So this is it with this talk. Uh, you can also ask any questions if you need like uh, anything else? Tiago, if you have any questions, anything interested, please. The mic is yours now.
Okay, great presentation. I will put here on the chat, okay, my questions.
Yeah, no problem.
I think maybe to be better. I just
Uh,
post here. I post on the YouTube, so
okay.
everyone can
Uh,
see here.
there's one question like, what should I do if my company has two domains for the same thing? For example, in a hospital, the user can be a customer from the financial department or a patient from the doctor's point of view. Yes, that's a good question. So, yeah, uh, these are two distinct domains. The domain in some context might be different from another context. So no problem. We will have to separate them and speak to that context in the same language or the same problem that in the same context that is trying to solve. And also we will have another dedicated domain where it is going to play in that another context. So we shouldn't mix them together. So each one we will have its own context. I
Okay,
hope.
yes, amazing. So in this case, you should not have two class called user in each one, right? You should
No, no,
not.
no, never, never. Yes, that's a good
Amazing.
one.
Okay, I have another question I will put here in the
Please.
chat. Let me see. Okay, it should be, just give me a second.
This also we will show also this in the demo. Hopefully, in the next session, we'll show also how to like put two domains. I'm preparing a demo, and yeah. What should we do if we define a microservice for a domain, and after a while we realize that there are two subdomains? Yes, that's a very valid because uh, the subdomain, as we said, might be further in the future, might be decomposed into many subdomains, not two or three. That's absolutely no problem because it's like evaluation. It evolves. Our problem to this domain might be limited, but tomorrow, after we realize it needs like 3, 4 subdomains, or might be we cancel some of the domains, like we don't need them, we combine them into another domains. That's absolutely no problem with this. It's actually shows that our understanding of the business is perfect, and it's a great step. It's not a bad step. I hope this answered the question. Second
Yes,
one.
but yes, I
Yeah,
put another comment
yeah.
uh, to
Should we
know.
should we create 3 microservices? What about the names? Do they use the same pattern to group them? See, uh, creating 2, 3 microservices. What are the names of this? It's really the job of the whole team. So it's up to the whole team. They decide. It's not like a single one who has to take this decision. Uh, it's like, as we say, iterative process. So it's the domain experts, developers, architects. As a team, we should define what should we put. Should we put it as 2 microservices, 3 microservices? What about the names? It's always uh, the name. If we have the same name for 2 microservices, that means it's a big problem. So yeah, that means we are not understanding our domain perfectly. We should again revise and again rethink, always restudy the subdomains. Uh, yeah, as we said, is the pattern to categorize our like RAD projects. Always do it at high level, then look into the organizational structure. You'll find similar match between them. Then try to go one step down. Try, does this subdomain needs another microservice or not? If we realize in the future, yes, it really needs, yes, go ahead. you should do it. I hope this like clarified these questions.
Yes, yes. No more question.
Yeah, please
Thank
go
you.
ahead. These
No,
questions
no
are really good.
more. No more
Yeah,
questions. I don't have any more questions. Thank you for the presentation. It was amazing.
thank you so
And
much.
yeah, it's that. Maybe you
Okay,
can.
yeah, we will end the